Well, how does hatred, xenophobia, discrimination play into this? Because I think you can make the argument that that kind of a defensive mechanism helps with being paranoid, constructively or destructively. So how do you make it constructive and not destructive?
Today, with the COVID epidemic, hating other people and scorning other people is what one could call maladaptive. If one hates other people, under other circumstances, it might not have severe consequences, although you could misjudge other people. But the essence of COVID is that COVID is a global problem. It's not a problem for just one country. Suppose that in Korea, you succeeded in eliminating COVID completely within Korea. Nevertheless, Korea would just get reinfected by COVID in other countries. Just as long as there is COVID anywhere in the world, the whole world will be at risk for COVID. And so we cannot afford to hate other people because other people are potential sources of reinfection by COVID, but we also are potential sources of reinfection of other people. Hatred of other people is a luxury that we can no longer afford.
I agree with you completely, but that's a nice segue into my next question, which is, in Upheaval, your most recent book, unless you've written another in the meanwhile, you note that leadership and national consensus is what enables countries to overcome national crisis. And that certainly makes sense in the national context, but with COVID-19, as you say, we're faced with a crisis on a global scale. With a global governance system that doesn't have a unified government with the tools and the powers necessary to provide that leadership and build consensus. So where and how do we build and find that leadership and consensus?
That is a key question about COVID. Leadership is important, of course, at the national level, but also at the international level. COVID is an international problem. Where is the international leadership? We have presidents, we have prime ministers of our countries. We do not have an international leader. It's my hope that COVID will force people of the world to recognize a need for international leadership that we have not had in the past. Of course, we have international organizations. We have the United Nations. We have WHO. We have other international organizations. But those organizations do not have leaders as powerful as the leader of the United States or as the leader of Korea. And so a possible benefit, a possible good consequence of the COVID epidemic is that it may force people of the world to recognize that we have to act together and we have to cooperate, which includes developing more effective international leadership, which we have not had until now. You've devoted your lifetime to international affairs and international organizations. And here we have another international crisis. From your perspective, how do you see the current COVID crisis as different, if it is different, from all of those previous international crises with which you have been so skilled at managing them?
This crisis has pitted a virus, a very fast and silently spreading virus, vis-a-vis humanity. And so the immediate reaction was to close down, shut the borders, lock down, because if you want to stop the virus from spreading, you have to stop people from moving because the virus moves with the people. And so that has made it very difficult to generate that unity of purpose needed to fight this global crisis. So in this situation where that unity of purpose is very difficult to generate, how do we do this? How do we do that? The conversation, global conversation surrounding what is now known as the COVAX facility, led by the WHO and Gavi. I think there are something like 160 countries who are now a part of that conversation. Basically, a scheme whereby countries pool resources together to help pharmaceutical companies develop, produce the vaccine so that that would be available at mass scale to all countries of the region. I think that conversation is very useful, and I think whether this conversation succeeds or not, and in the midst of that conversation, I'm sure that the issues that you raise will also come up. But I think just having that global conversation with everybody joining in, whether this succeeds or not, I think will be a huge test of the unity that is needed to overcome this crisis, but also whether humanity is better prepared or not for the next crisis that comes along. And as you say, there will be a next.